Jesus was not just without sin and perfect, but he was human, and he does understand your grief and pain. So I talked in depth about the meaning of his sympathies, of that Jesus is able to sympathize. It says he's not. It says two negatives, which means he is able to sympathize with our weaknesses. So this is the NIV that I read out of. Different versions have different words. It's kind of like synonyms and adjectives and things like that just kind of, we all have different words that go together. And sometimes when we mention different words, though, it kind of helps us understand that better. So I'm going to talk a little more about that word weaknesses, which comes from the Greek word asthenes. Asthenes. So asthenes. So what that means is frailty, feebleness, infirm, for like an infirmity, or just being without strength. Weaknesses means you don't have a lot of strength, right? If there's a weakness, there's a lack of strength. We all probably know that, but it's good to hear these different ways of putting it, right? So is it good? Do we enjoy not having strength? No. I don't like being sick. I don't like being weak. I don't like it days that I feel like I'm tired or dragging when I want to get things done. None of us really likes to feel weak. But Jesus understands it. Okay, he understands the weaknesses. And I'm imagining, as I said in the first video, he understands. He was tired at times. He felt weak at times. He probably got sick even at times. And we don't think of that. But he was fully human. Even though he was God and he never sinned, he never missed the mark, he was fully human. So so another thing that it talked about to explain that Greek word is that it's not just physical, because of course it does have to do with physical weaknesses, but that word also definitely meant moral weaknesses, people who are weak to do what's right or do God's commandment and things like that, and also spiritual and emotional. All of it is included. So Jesus understands all of it. Now, when it comes to grief and trauma and things like that, and a lot of life, there's emotions, there's our heart, and it's hard. And it is, sometimes we just feel like we can't do anything, we can't move forward, or we don't know what to do, or what have you. So he understands that, is what this is saying. He really does understand that. So to go a little further, it's a lack of power or ability to perform certain actions or uphold certain standards is another thing it said. So with grief, as I try to tell people, we can't, if it's a life-changing grief that's just slapped us upside the head and we acknowledge our life is different, it's changed, and if we're real about it, it's changed forever. It doesn't mean we can't move forward and be better. I'm doing way better. I was able to go to my family's get-together this year compared to the last 2 years. I mean, I'm just kind of breezing over a little bit of my story, which I share in other videos. I was able to be a bell ringer for the Salvation Army. God led me to do that, and they hired me. And oh my gosh, I was able to sing and just enjoy the music and smile and welcome people and, try to just be a light and cheerful. I was able to be that this year. That was huge. Okay, so that's just a little bit of my recent testimony. But when we're grieving, we can't physically do a lot of times the same things that we used to do. We can't mentally do a lot of things we used to do. We are emotional wreck, so we may be crying all the time, or we're fine, and then all of a sudden something triggers us and we get a grief burst, as they call them. And so emotionally we're not as strong, physically we're not as strong, mentally we're not as strong, okay, all around, right? Spiritually, we may be questioning God. And I'm going to go into that more in probably one of the other videos coming up. So, but sometimes we're mad at God, we blame God. So spiritually, we're not in the same place a lot of times, okay? We question it more. It's okay. It's normal, but I'm just saying that this is the reality. So I want to relate this. The Lord showed me this is another passage to relate to grief that I hadn't completely realized, okay? Does it go beyond it? Yes, it goes beyond it. It can be trials. It can be just problems, troubles, stresses, fighting, and fights. It could be all kinds of issues that could be included here. But grief is definitely part of it, is all I'm trying to stress. Okay, grief and loss and so forth. So it said that this word is often used in contrast of human frailty versus divine strength. So literally they contrast this word like us being weak compared to God and so forth. So I just immediately, as I was, thinking about this part, went into one of my favorite promises, which is in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. And then literally, as I read more about the word, when you go into the passage through lexicon, and then once you're in that kind of a graph, there's a whole lot to see there. Then when you're in that graph, which you just have to go there to get what I'm saying, because you can do this through books too, but most all of us are online now, right? You can click the original meaning of one of the words, which, like I said, this word is, I have to look at it because I haven't memorized it. It is asthenes is the way it's pronounced, I believe. It shows the pronunciation, and you can keep reading, and it tells a whole lot about it. So then as I kept going, boom, there it was. It says the New Testament redefines weakness as an opportunity for God's power to be made perfect. Just again, how most cultures do not say weakness is good, or make it okay, or make it normal. A lot of people, if they share what they're going through, nobody wants to hear that. They only want to see you when you're strong and you're happy or whatever, right? So the New Testament redefines weakness as an opportunity for God's power to be made perfect. And so I have to go to this. It plays right off of this. And what Paul says here, and I encourage you to study all these passages, but it's in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. I'm not going to go into the full thing of it, but basically Paul is sharing with us how he got a thorn in his flesh. No, we don't know, and I like what one of the things I looked up said, I think it was on purpose that he didn't say what it was, because he knew that my thorn in my flesh might be totally different from his, and will be different because we're all unique. So he says in verses 8 through 10, I'm going to read. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. Who of us doesn't want pain to be taken away? Health issue to be taken away? Whatever it is. We all would want it taken away, right? If we could. So he pleaded, but the Lord said to him, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore Paul says, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. So this is what he learned through going through this, just like we all learn. Paul had to learn too. It wasn't like he knew all of it all at one time. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. So I think right there it shows that this relates to different things. Not kind of like I said before. So I'm not saying I'm there, okay, and I'm definitely not there. But I've learned to grasp this as a promise that in my weakness, he is strong. That it's okay if I feel weak. If I'm flat out sick, I need to be in bed, So, don't get me wrong. I believe in going to doctors, etc. But there's times I'm not doing the greatest or what have you, but I know God wants me to do something. I've already planned something, and I know it's from him, and I know I need to do it, and I want to do it. And I claim that promise. I stand on that promise, and I can see him show up with his strength every time. Sometimes it's especially in the strongest parts of our gifts and talents that we see this, right? So sometimes maybe when you're serving God in a certain way or worshiping him or what have you in a certain way, you may not feel pain that you normally feel or what have you, or you just have supernatural strength and then you feel weak later. Those are things that happen too. But it's just amazing how he says, I delight in weaknesses, insults. Who of us likes to be insulted? Hardships, persecutions, nope, and difficulties. For when I'm weak, then I'm strong. So I'm so glad that it pointed to that because I was already going to go there. So today is mostly about the weaknesses, how Jesus, he can relate to us more than we realize because he was fully human. He experienced it. Look at what he went through on the cross. I mean, I'm not going to go into that fully right now, but a crown of thorns on his head, whips enough that one more would have killed him right then. Then he had to carry the cross. He bled. He suffocated to death. That's just a little synopsis. Way more than any of us have ever gone to. None of us can claim to have gone through what Jesus went through. But with that, he cares about you. He sees your weaknesses and he reaches out for you. He doesn't leave you. He reaches out to you unless you turn in pride and try to deal with it on your own. Then he's like, well, hands off. I can't help them until they turn to me and let me help them. But he reaches out to have compassion. He doesn't just say, oh, I'm so sorry you're in pain and you're going through that. He says, I want to help you. I have compassion on you. I want to help you. I want to strengthen you. I want to show you the way. I want to help you. That's what God does. And that's what we need to realize. He's our first support system. Always will be with us. Never will leave us or forsake us. And he never even sleeps. So 24/7, he can be with us, supporting us and helping us if we would just reach out and realize it, admit that we need help, and have a little faith. So that's all I'm going to say for today. Until next week, we're going to talk about verse 16, which is awesome. So see you next week. Please share this with a friend and come to our support group and if you're in the Newport Richey area. God bless. Bye-bye.